Welcome to another episode of The Finest Hour, a podcast where we share inspiring stories of achievement, growth, and success. I'm Ilona Pitt, your Finest Hour host, and today I'm joined by Len Palmer, the Group Managing Director at Lander Tubular Products. Len, welcome.
Thank you.
And it's a mouthful, but Lander are the leading engineering and fabrication manufacturer specializing in tube manipulation and CNC tube bending of metal and plastic pipe and tube assemblies. Have I got it right?
Yep, couldn't have said it better myself.
Fantastic. And it's a very big company. You guys employ over 700 people, right?
Yep. So we've got 5 factories in total.
Yes.
Three factories in the UK.
Yeah.
Our biggest factory is in Halsowing in the West Midlands, and we've got 2 factories in America.
Yes, so a lot of responsibility on your shoulders.
Yes.
Yeah. And you have had a very successful career spanning over several decades. You've got an MBA, and you've been awarded the top 100 personalities by the manufacturer recently. Was it 21?
Yes. Yeah. And also the business has won very, very significant recognition over recent years as well. So since 2016, we've picked up a major award pretty much every year.
Yes.
Predominantly focused around either operational excellence or for our apprenticeship scheme.
Yes, you've got an excellent apprenticeship scheme at Lander, and you've been with the company for how long now?
I originally joined Lander in 2005 as general manager for a injection moulding business that we owned at the time, Lander Carlisle. I was part of a management team that spun that out as part of a management buyout. And then I rejoined Lander Automotive in 2014 as operations director. And then in January 2020, I picked up the role of managing director.
The group managing director, yeah?
Yeah, at that time it was just managing director, because at that time we just had the simple task of running one factory, which was 100% automotive. But over recent years, we've diversified into other sectors and then created a group of companies which are a much more diversified group of businesses. So now only about half of our revenue comes from automotive. The other half comes from yellow goods customers.
And what a better time to take over than January 2020, just before a global pandemic? Is that right?
I got talked into it. I got told it would be fun, and then in the period from January 2020, we sold the business in March 2020. The business is 140 years old. It was family owned still at that stage. It was sold into a private equity group called Grove Investments Limited, who purchased the business around, I think it was the 11th of March. And then 2 weeks into their ownership, we went into a lockdown. Yeah. So not only have I had a very unusual 3 years, but our new owners have had a very unusual 3 years owning us as well. So
scary times, but you guys pulled through, and you've had several recognition during them strange times, and the company is going from strength to strength.
Yeah. So it's been a challenging period, but also during that period, we have actually been able to achieve some really big strategic goals in terms of diversification. And we're still in the process of digesting those businesses and understanding how to run as a group structure. So it's been character building, I would say, the last 3 years.
Exactly. But what we're here to talk about today is your finest hour moment as well. And that's something, you had to have a little think about, dig deeper. And from our conversation, I know it's quite at the start of your career, really, because you've always been interested in manufacturing, and you actually grew up in the shadow of the manufacturing plant, right?
Yes.
It was the Rover factory.
Yeah. So where I grew up as a boy, I was very, very close to the old Rover factory. Yeah. Most of my friends and peers through school, that's where they headed. Yeah. My dad worked at Rover on the production lines. My brother worked as a toolmaker. Yeah. My dad implored me not to go there. Yeah. So I didn't. So I left school at 16 and found my way in different manufacturing organisations and joined at the very, very lowest level. I didn't even go through
It wasn't a formal apprenticeship.
I joined in what was an old YTS scheme. So I literally joined a factory at the bottom rung. and then spent close on 10 years working in the shop floor, working in various factory roles. I've always been interested in manufacturing, and actually those periods that I spent working in the shop floor are actually a really enjoyable part of my career. But then the business recruited some other managers and directors into the business, specifically with the task of modernising and introducing lean manufacturing. And I was encouraged by one of those managers to take up a newly created role as a team leader as part of a cellular manufacturing program. And that was the turning point, really, that set me on the path to where I am now.
And in terms of that time when you was asked to step into that role, was you encouraged? Was you ready for it? What was your mindset at the time? Because it's 10 years you was on the shop floor, and suddenly something changed.
I was very heavily persuaded to do it, and actually I wasn't certain if it was something that I wanted to do. I have to give credit to a guy that worked in the business at the time, a guy called Steve Lee, who really encouraged me to go for it. And actually, against my own sort of better judgment at the time, I accepted it, thinking, well, I'll see how it goes. And within 6 months of doing that, I realised actually it was probably the best thing I'd ever done, because I really enjoyed the aspect of being a team leader. I was able to start to learn things, etc. And that really set me on the path to where I am now. I started to realise that potentially could make a career out of being involved in production and operations. I certainly never dreamt at the time that I would have the career that I've had, because what I've been able to do since that period in time has been beyond what would have been my wildest dreams at the time.
At the time, yes. And looking back, at the time, have you realised that it was like a defining moment, that you taking that opportunity will basically open all the doors, or is it your mentor maybe try to explain that this is where it can lead to?
I mean, Steve as a mentor definitely, outlined that was the potential for it. I didn't realise at the time it was, and I think if I did, I probably would have been so terrified that I probably wouldn't have done it. So in many respects, I'm glad I was innocently led into it, because, I look back now and I really now can see the significance of that turning point, because it's brought about such a change in my life and the things that I've done since. But at the time, I didn't have a clue as to where it would lead. I'm delighted it went that way. But I think if I'd have known at the time, maybe I would have stayed in the shop floor.
So how long you spent at this? What was the progression from that point?
Well, then from there onwards, basically, I went through, I became a production manager. I then moved on from that original company and then entered into my sort of first role within the automotive sector. And I've been in the automotive sector ever since. So around about 1995, 1996, I came into the automotive sector. I joined an absolutely amazing company, which unfortunately isn't in the automotive sector anymore, a company called Johnson Controls. And whereby I did 4 years with Johnson Controls, and I probably had more personal development in those 4 years than I've had over the course of my career. So in terms of lean manufacturing, in terms of people management, I was very fortunate whilst I was working at Johnson Controls that some of the training and development I had was what would be considered now quite left field. So, we were trained in neuro-linguistic programming, we were trained in transactional analysis, and for quite a macho work environment, which was a just-in-time sequencing plant, this was very unusual type of training. And I have to say, when I look back on that period, actually, it didn't just change my capabilities in terms of work. It changed me as a person in terms of really understanding my own strengths and weaknesses. So
and communicating with people and getting the best out of people.
So that really was my schooling, if you like. And then from there, I've progressed through every role within operations up to operations director, including European responsibilities. I've been fortunate enough to travel the world doing the role, and then arrive back into Lander and the roles where I'm now.
Well, let's go back a little bit because I know you've got an MBA. So when did you do the MBA?
Okay, so I started an MBA.
And why did you do it as well?
Okay, I in the early part of my career, particularly when I started to progress into sort of production manager level, I had a real chip on my shoulder about feeling inferior, because a lot of the peers that I was starting to work with at the time, some of them were entering through graduate programs, and I felt a little bit inferior because I hadn't got a degree. So again, based on advice that was given in terms of, what to do, I decided to study for a degree. I set the bar very high in terms of what I wanted to do. I spent 6 years studying part-time to attain an MBA. And it was really to sort of shake off a little bit of imposter syndrome that I felt. But also as well, just to give me a broader understanding, because I'd grown up in operations. Because I'd worked in the shop floor, I had a really good understanding of how manufacturing, factories worked. But the MBA gave me a much broader skill set, and actually helped me sort of shake off some of that feeling of inferiority. And the imposter syndrome side of things, it took me a long time to realise actually that everyone feels it at some stage.
It exists first of all.
Because I would look up to people. And it didn't occur to me at the time that no matter what level you operate within an organisation, everyone has fears, insecurities, things that they, struggle with from a confidence point of view. But I didn't realise that. And actually, once I gained a better understanding of myself and understanding that, I sort of accepted it as part and parcel of development. And now I think if you're not doing stuff outside of your comfort zone, you're not really growing and learning.
Like today, is that you still feel a little bit out of the comfort zone? Yeah,
this is absolutely out of my comfort zone. So, I'm learning as we go along.
Fantastic, and thank you for joining us on the podcast and actually talking about the imposter syndrome. Because, myself, I've come across this. It's a feeling that has a name, and other people experience it. I think even Albert Einstein had it. So it's interesting that you talk about this and. Other people can also.
Well, I always felt that I was overreaching in terms of the roles that I was doing. I've always been able to achieve in the roles that I was doing once I've been able to.
So you was well qualified to be where you needed to be. But you always, because for example, you didn't have the formal apprenticeship route or anything like that. And you've done yourself justice. You've actually invested in the MBA yourself.
I ended up paying for that myself. I think from when we spoke before, I think if I was to put it in today's money, it'd be about £30,000 of cost that I sunk into that. It's probably the best money I've ever invested. Because in terms of return on investments, in terms of what it's given me, in terms of not just my capabilities, but also my confidence, it's probably the best thing I ever did.
So, what advice would you give to people who might be experiencing that sort of that feeling that maybe I'm not in the right place? Am I the right person for the job? But they clearly are. They clearly are capable and they are in the right place. But we all have these insecurities. So what would your advice be?
I think the thing is, what you have to realise is that everybody goes through similar sort of processes. And actually, once you accept that and you accept that feeling of being out of your comfort zone and not quite sure of what you're doing is actually where growth lies. And actually, you have to test yourself against these things. If you've got enough self-belief, then you will achieve and you can overcome those sort of barriers. And for me, the sort of the light bulb moment was actually realising that when you speak to other people, if you're fortunate enough to have a mentor who's senior enough, and when you hear them reveal to you that they have insecurities and fears as well, it gives you a degree of understanding actually that everyone's in the same boat.
It's a process that we all go through as human beings.
And I've always tried to remain very positive, including dealing with setbacks. When I was operations director at Lander, we had a mantra in the operations team, was that we win or we learn. And we try to turn setbacks into opportunities to review and learn from it. And we didn't deal with setbacks from a negative point of view, but we deal with setbacks actually as an opportunity to grow. And once I came to terms with the fact actually that everyone has those insecurities, I then relaxed a little bit and stopped internalising it as something that was just me. Everybody goes through it. And you have to embrace it and you have to learn to accept it as part and parcel of learning and growing.
And so in terms of being ready for you had your finest hour moment you stepped in, it led to a great career. You obviously grown through various situations. But what's the sort of attitude that a person needs to have? Or like, is this a mentor that finds the person, or is the person that finds the mentor? How does that, what's the process?
Yeah.
What's the sauce ingredient?
I think there's a little bit of both. I think there's like a natural order where a good mentor will spot potential in people and try and draw that through. I certainly didn't seek out what happened in the early part of my career, but I was fortunate enough that somebody spotted what they felt was enough potential to try and draw that through.
Yeah.
And I've spent a career now trying to pass that on. So I do the same now. I've mentored many of our apprentices, so as part of our apprenticeship program.
Yeah.
I've done one-to-one mentorships with apprentices, and I've also done group mentorship programs where we've had apprentice team leaders.
Yeah.
Because again, what I'm trying to do is to pass on, that what was done for me.
Because you are part of that process, and you want to continue the process of creating a lot of other leaders and giving opportunity.
Yeah. As a team of directors at Landa, all of us have come through similar backgrounds. So all of us have come through similar sort of development processes. So we've got a really, really firm commitment actually to bringing opportunity through for young people in our businesses. Our apprenticeship program, although it's at a slightly smaller scale now, at one stage, 2 years after we kicked it off, we'd got 150 apprentices in our business.
Wow.
And at the time, that was out of a workforce of around about 550. So we went really big on the apprenticeship scheme. I now take great pleasure in seeing we've got 15 or 16 people now in professional roles in the business who were all in those original intakes around 2016, 2017. And seeing those people develop.
Progress, so that gives you a lot of satisfaction from a personal point of view.
Yeah, and I've always said when we do the induction sessions with our apprentices, we always explain to them, we always give them a bit of history of the directors. And I always say to them, if we don't get a future director out of one of our apprenticeship programs at some point in the future, I will have failed.
Yeah.
So we really, really want to see that come through. And I have an obligation to do for other people what was done for me. Any
up and coming people that you can maybe give a shout out to? Or
I won't name them because it's unfair for them, but we've got a couple who I think are going to be absolutely stellar performers. The level of maturity, once our apprenticeships finish through their apprenticeships and they get seeded into the professional ranks in our business, the level of maturity that you see from them is absolutely astounding. And you look at them and it's hard to remember them as when they turned up as fresh-faced 18-year-olds in our business. You look at them now and they're incredible in terms of the talent and potential they've got. And we've probably got 4 or 5 who I think have got real chances of becoming directors of the future.
So it's the talent and the opportunity, that's when these two meet, and that's the secret sauce, isn't it?
That is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And other than Steve Lehigh?
Steve Lehigh.
Lehigh.
Yeah.
Are there any other influences in your career?
I've been fortunate. I've worked for and worked with some really, really talented people over the years. My group chairman now, who's one of the shareholders of the business, a guy called Mike Gillett. I worked for him 23 years ago, originally when I was a manufacturing manager. He was a mentor at the time and he's a mentor to me now. So even now in the role, I still need somebody that I can go to and just use as a sounding board.
The problems are just getting bigger with experience, right?
So Mike has had a big influence, particularly over the last 3 years, while I have learned and I'm still learning what it means to be a managing director. Having spent a lifetime in operations, I'm now in a more general role, and I'm still learning that. So even now, I still need somebody to use as a sounding board.
Any advice for your younger self?
My advice to my younger self would have been believe in yourself more. Don't lose your sense of humour, because again, particularly in the automotive sector, it's an incredibly pressurised environment, and a really sharp sense of humour is a prerequisite in terms of being able to survive what can be an absolutely crazy industry.
You was too serious?
I think so. I think I've learned as I've matured actually that I can laugh a little bit more at situations because I've got the experience now. early part of my career, took things very seriously.
Yeah.
The pressure of operating, particularly in just-in-time environments in automotive.
Yes.
You have to be careful sometimes it doesn't just chew you up. And my advice would be
Chill a bit.
Yeah, keep the sense of humour. Yeah.
And you maintain it to today,
Yeah.
right?
Look, it has to be fun.
Yes.
You know, one of our core values for Landa is that, you know, we encourage people to have a blast.
Yeah.
We want people to enjoy it. You spend a lot of time in the work environment. You know, we are very serious about what we do. We don't take ourselves that seriously, you know, and we try and make sure that we keep things, you know, as fun as they can be in what can be an incredibly demanding industrial sector. You know, the automotive, it's great opportunity to learn and development, but it's also a very, very tough industrial sector to work in. It
is, you know, your plant is amazing, and the level of automation, cleanliness, and like how complicated things are there.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's high level stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, congratulations on your is it 3 years now?
Yeah, 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully on many more. And thank you very much for sharing your finest hour moment. Your doubts and coming. You know, it's this vulnerable sort of feeling that you shared with us. I think it's very valuable. You know, to others who'll be listening to that. So thank you for sharing that, Len.
Thank you.
And your journey. I commend you as well for continuing that process of creating other leaders and passing on. So as you said, you are the part of that process and continuing it. And you can see that through, you know, how the company has been doing over the past few years. All the awards, they're not for nothing.
Yeah.
You've got great people, great team behind you. So
Thank you.
Congrats on that.
Thank you very much.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Finest Hour and you've gained some invaluable insights into leadership and success that Len has shared with us today. We will see you for another episode very soon. Thank you very much for tuning in, and see you again.